If you've been following Nikon closely in the mirrorless era, there's a certain tension in the air right now. A feeling that's difficult to ignore if you've spent any time reading forums, watching review channels, or simply paying attention to how the broader camera market has shifted over the past few years. Because the mirrorless landscape has never been this competitive. And Nikon, perhaps more than any other legacy brand, understands how quickly momentum can be gained and just as quickly lost. Especially in an age where every firmware update, supply issue, or missed feature becomes amplified across social media within hours, which is why the conversations surrounding a potential Nikon Z82 don't feel like the usual rumor mill excitement that flares up and dies down every product cycle, but instead feel heavier, more deliberate. Almost like a collective pause where photographers are waiting to see whether Nikon will tighten its grip on the progress it's made or allow rivals to define the next chapter. And that sense of anticipation brings us to a grounded, realistic look at where things stand right now, examining the Z8 itself, the surprising discounts that shook the market, the steady stream of leaks surrounding its successor, the broader sentiment within the Nikon community, and the growing belief that the Z82 could represent a quiet but meaningful redemption moment for the brand. One of the clearest signals that something new may be approaching isn't always a leaked spec sheet or a shadowy factory photo, but rather a shift in pricing strategy. And during Black Friday 2025, the Nikon Z8 experienced its most dramatic and unexpected price drop since launch, plunging by nearly $800 to around $3,497 on Amazon, before dipping even further to $3,399 at Walmart. A number that genuinely surprised even seasoned reviewers who are accustomed to seeing modest discounts on high-end bodies, but rarely anything this aggressive so early in a camera's life cycle, especially one that has consistently ranked among the best mirrorless options for astrophotography, wildlife, portrait work, and hybrid filmmaking. And what made this moment especially interesting wasn't just the discount itself, but the way inventory behaved around it, with stock disappearing quickly, reappearing briefly, then vanishing again, creating a sense of urgency that went beyond a simple seasonal sale. Reviewers who typically avoid commenting on pricing suddenly acknowledged that they wished they had waited, while others openly stated that this was the best value the Z8 had ever offered. And whenever a professional-grade camera drops this sharply during a major sales window, the same two interpretations inevitably surface. Either the manufacturer is attempting to push a larger number of users into its ecosystem, or a successor is close enough that clearing shelf space becomes a strategic priority. And while Black Friday discounts alone don't confirm an impending release, the timing combined with the growing consistency of Z82 rumors created a perfect storm of curiosity, making the discount feel less like a simple deal and more like a subtle nudge toward something new on the horizon. What's particularly notable about the Z82 leaks is how restrained they've been, not exaggerated or flashy, but steady and repetitive across multiple sources, which often suggests that the rumored upgrades are more about refinement than reinvention. And the most discussed of these is the push toward 8K 60p video with significantly improved thermal management, an area where the Z8 drew legitimate criticism from filmmakers who found its heat limitations restrictive during longer recording sessions. And if Nikon manages to deliver effectively unlimited 8K recording without the need for an external fan, that alone would represent a meaningful leap forward, not because it sounds impressive on a spec sheet, but because it directly addresses one of the Z8's most practical shortcomings. Alongside this, there are increasingly credible whispers about expanded codec support influenced by Nikon's acquisition of Red Digital Cinema, with the idea not being that the Z82 suddenly transforms into a cinema camera, but that higher quality internal recording options, such as 12-bit RAW or improved ProRes RAW workflows, could become standard, reinforcing the camera's hybrid identity in a way that feels intentional rather than experimental. Sensor rumors have also evolved over time, with early speculation about a jump to around 67 megapixels, gradually giving way to more believable reports, suggesting that Nikon will instead refine the existing 45.7 megapixel stacked sensor, focusing on faster readout speeds, improved low-light performance, and better control over rolling shutter. Which would make sense given how well-regarded the current sensor already is, and how valuable incremental improvements can be for both stills and video shooters. Autofocus remains another area where expectations are high. As while the Z8 already performs admirably, there is still room for smarter subject recognition, more responsive 3D tracking, and deeper AI-assisted scene understanding, areas where Sona continues to set the benchmark. And if the Z82 meaningfully closes that gap, it could shift professional perceptions in a way that spec sheets alone never could. Ergonomic refinements are also expected, not in dramatic ways, but through subtle changes that matter over long shooting days, such as a deeper and more secure grip for telephoto use, a brighter and more detailed electronic viewfinder that matches or surpasses the Z9, a more sunlight-treatable rear display, and incremental improvements to weather sealing and durability, none of which would dominate headlines, but all of which would quietly elevate the camera's reliability and user confidence. Taken together, these leaks paint a picture that feels believable and grounded, suggesting a camera designed not to revolutionize the market, but to smooth out friction points and deliver a more complete experience. Before talking about redemption, though, it's important to acknowledge just how much the Z8 already gets right, because it is, by most measures, an exceptionally versatile and capable camera, with silent shutter performance that transformed how many photographers approach wildlife, events, and discreet portrait work. A stacked sensor that remains among the best in its class, robust handling with large professional lenses, and a level of flexibility that makes it feel like multiple cameras in one. Offering high-resolution full-frame performance, an ultra-fast DX crop mode for wildlife, and efficient lower-resolution output when speed matters. That said, no tool is flawless, and the Z8's struggles with extended 8K recording sessions left some users frustrated despite firmware updates that mitigated but did not fully eliminate the issue, while battery life, though acceptable, still trails the Z9, which many professionals rely on for long, demanding shooting days. Some users have reported occasional banding under extreme artificial lighting. Others remain uneasy about the single C-Fexpress slot, particularly those working in weddings, journalism, or commercial environments where redundancy is non-negotiable. And the early strap lug recall, although resolved quickly, introduced a moment of hesitation among more cautious buyers. None of these issues are catastrophic, but collectively, they created space for Nikon to deliver a refined successor that feels unquestionably complete. Within the Nikon community, the conversation around the Z8 and a potential Z82 is a mix of honesty, humor, and pragmatic optimism, with some joking that they'll wait for a Z8 because something better is always around the corner, while others share small frustrations alongside genuine appreciation for what the camera already offers. And the overwhelming sentiment remains that the Z8 is one of Nikon's strongest releases in years, especially when paired with modern Z-mount lenses that showcase just how far the system has come. Photographers upgrading from the D850 often describe the Z8 as a true generational leap. ZF users admire its retro charm, but acknowledge that the Z8 feels more purpose-built for demanding professional work. Landscape shooters praise the high-resolution Z7 line, but recognize that the Z8's autofocus operates in an entirely different league. And many agree that if forced to choose a single Nikon body to handle every conceivable assignment, the Z8 would be that choice. In short, the public perception is clear. The Z8 is powerful, capable, and extremely versatile, but not untouchable, and there is a genuine appetite for a successor that builds on its strengths while quietly resolving its weaknesses. If the Nikon Z82 arrives with the improvements that have been consistently rumored, it could stand as one of the most meaningful releases in the Z system, not because it reinvents photography, but because it demonstrates that Nikon is listening, learning, and refining, delivering a camera that feels like a confident evolution rather than a tentative experiment. And that's why many see it as a potential redemption moment. A chance for Nikon to reaffirm trust after early recalls and thermal complaints, and to show that its mirrorless strategy is not only ambitious, but mature. For those who need a camera today, the Z8 remains one of the best hybrid bodies available, especially at its heavily discounted price. But for those willing to wait for the most polished version of a proven concept, the Z82 represents hope for something even better. And either way, it's an exciting moment to be a Nikon shooter, because for the first time in a while, it feels like the company isn't just reacting to the market, but actively shaping its next move with intention and care.